Neal Bruce. I've actually changed roles recently at Monster. I was VP of Alliances. I'm now in this new role called this group called the Global Innovation Group. About 10 of us trying to reinvent the company. So if you have ideas on reinventing Monster, I would love to have a free drink with you later tonight. Okay, so I'm going to walk. I need podiums, so I'm just going to walk around. Why am I here? Why does this matter? That's usually what people ask at the beginning of a presentation. So I'm going to answer that question. So I was, like you, I was a recruiter for 11 years, recruiting manager, director of global staffing, had global roles at EY Consulting right before they got bought by Gemini, and worked at Parametric Technology, director of global staffing there. So I've done global staffing roles. I was on Monster's Customer Advisory Group. I asked a lot of questions. They got sick of my questions. They hired me. I've been there for 4 years. And during that time, I've been able to talk to lots of other people who do recruiting, look at Monster research, talk to other executives at other companies like Oracle and Google and cool companies like that. And I'm trying to put all this stuff together to tell a story for you. We'll see if I was successful. Okay, so my goals today are to be provocative, to get you to think, to get you to talk, to get you to act. Because ultimately, you're giving me about 40 minutes of your life. Thank you for that. But if you don't do anything with this 40 minutes, you've wasted 40 minutes of your life. So I hope that you don't agree with everything I say. I hope it creates discussion. I hope it makes you act, even if it's just to convince me and convince you that I'm wrong and that you're going to do something different. I want you to act. At the end, that's what's going to be measured. Okay, so how am I going to do this? Global data trends. Got some data to share with you. People usually like that stuff. Global recruiting competencies. I spoke at the last ERE conference in Washington, D.C. I introduced some new roles I think will be important in recruiting. I only got to introduce them in this presentation. I'm actually going to go a level deeper into some of the competencies in detail. Global recruiting framework. So I hear a lot of recruiting people say, recruiting is so different around the world, you'll never have a global recruiting framework. I think that is not true. And I'll give you my 3-minute version of how to build a global recruiting framework. And I will close on the idea of a noble profession. I was at a conference last week. I do a lot of conferences. I was at the Ritz-Carlton in Phoenix. Yes, I do have a hard life. And at the Ritz-Carlton in Phoenix, I was in a conference presentation, and the conference speaker asked, are there any people in HR in the room? And one person kind of meekly almost raised his hand. And it bothers me. We're in a noble profession, and I want to recognize that with you today and then have some time for discussion. Okay, global trends. Start with this slide. Monster has joint research with DDI. DDI has been doing this longitudinal study, recruiters and hiring managers. We've added job seekers. This is a study from people around the world looking at recruiter's view, hiring manager's view, seeker's view, all wrapped together, looking for interesting trends. I pulled out a few stats for this presentation. One, question was, is it getting harder to recruit around the world? And the answer is yes, across the board, especially in New Zealand and Australia. I know there was a presentation earlier about Australia, so for those people who are interested, I'm sure they learned a lot. This is another one that I found interesting. Do we annoy interviewees during the interview process? The answer is yes, and the seekers were happy enough to share their most 8 annoying interviewer habits. Here they are. Number 1, acting like you don't have time to talk with me. Number 2, withholding information about the position. Number 3, turning the interview into a cross-examination, etc. Now, let's look at the list. The top 5, 3 of them I've highlighted. I would argue these 3 things, acting like you don't have time, showing up late, what's the other one? Appearing unprepared for the interview. Those are not recruiting techniques. Those are human being techniques. Those are courtesy techniques. So, if I had 30 seconds to prepare someone for an interview, I would talk about being human, because that takes a lot less time than teaching them how to be an interviewer. I would say, read the CV and the job description before, show up on time, be an active listener. Right there, you've hit 3 of the top 5 problems for seekers. It's not being done. Now, if I had more than 30 seconds, I might get into some of the other things, like asking appropriate questions. So I've listed a few, what I would argue, not appropriate questions that real interviewers ask real interviewees. First one, you were a dog. What kind of dog would you be? My personal favorite is the hot dog. Real question. Could have been asked by one of my interviewers. Could have been asked by one of your interviewers. Second, what's your relationship with God? And finally, is this your natural hair color? For those interested, for what's left, yes, this is my natural hair color. Real questions. Really sad. Laugh, cry, hopefully laugh a second time. But it matters. So here's another question we asked. Does this matter to you as a seeker? Do you care about the interviewing experience? The answer is yes. It matters. And we have work to do in this area. Okay, so that report and a bunch of other reports are free, available on intelligence.monster.com. I put up this slide not just to promote free stuff on Monster, but you should talk to every vendor you have. You should say, where's your free stuff? You should download free stuff. You should look smarter than you are now, because it's a lot of data. People aren't using it. Really should do that. Okay. This is my global section around economics and demographics. It's pretty cheap to build stuff in China and India. It's a little more expensive in Prague. It's a lot more expensive in the US and the UK. What is the effect? People are building stuff in China and India. People are eventually moving more services to China and India. What is that going to do? By 2050, some predict, China will be the biggest economic superpower in the world, with 45 trillion, with a T, trillion dollar GDP. Might it be 44? Might it be 46? Yes, it might. But directionally, I think you get the point. 3 superpowers, US not the number 1. All the rest very far behind. Huge implications. So why is this true? I would argue one of the reasons is, for lack of a better phrase, baby production. Europeans are not having enough babies. And here it is. Except for the Irish. Go Irish. The Irish are having babies. The U.S. actually, in the U.S. they're not having babies, they're having immigration. It's actually fairly flatlined for people who were born in the U.S. But if the immigration policies in the U.S. change, that also will be a problem unless the U.S. starts having babies. But look at the Spanish and look at the Italians. Shrink by over 20%. So let's put this into perspective. Same study predicts total world population over 10 billion. So it's about 6 billion, 2000 we're about 6 billion, up to about 10 billion by 2050, up to about just short of 12 billion by 2100. So roughly doubling in the next 100 years. And Spain and Italy are shrinking. So this study, this data, correlates very well with the great study that Yumi showed. Where is that study? Thank you for this. Similar kind of feeling. So okay, I'm not here to depress you. If you live in China, I'm not here to get you excited. But it's important that you know some background so you can make some decisions about workforce planning. Okay, here's some more news. Europe's getting old. That's the point of this slide. And that's going to be problematic over the long run. Okay, so let's switch gears and let's look at some competencies that'll help us prepare for this new world that we're entering. So here are roles that I think are going to, they're not native to recruiting, but will be critical to recruiting if we're going to be prepared for the new world challenges.